I never
We have to
planned to
get
leave
out of
Earth.
here.
I
That
know, but
wasn't
how? We're
bravery or
surrounded.
loyalty
We'll find a
talking.
way,
It was
together.
inertia. My life had been
We have to
small but
stick together.
predictable. Night
I know.
shifts at the
I won't let
coastal
anything
power
happen to you.
relay, instant noodles at dawn, a borrowed sky full of satellites that never spoke back. When the consortium ships arrived, blotting out the stars with geometry too sharp to be natural, I watched from the breakwater and told myself the same lie everyone else did. They're just passing through. They weren't. The consortium didn't conquer planets with firestorms or dramatic last stands. They harvested. People like me, technicians, linguists, mechanics, vanished in clean, silent sweeps. No warning sirens. No heroic resistance. One moment, I was logging voltage fluctuations. The next, gravity folded and the world peeled away like paper. When I woke, I was no longer on Earth. The holding deck smelled of antiseptic and old metal. Rows of translucent cells lined the walls, each holding a different species, some familiar, most not. I learned quickly that screaming wasted oxygen and dignity in equal measure. So I stayed quiet, observed, survived. That was when I first saw her. She stood outside the cells, armored in overlapping plates that looked grown rather than forged, dark cobalt-edged with silver veins. Taller than any human I'd known, but not bulky. Balanced. Efficient. Her helmet was open, revealing a face that wasn't human but close enough to be unsettling. Smooth slate-gray skin, angular cheekbones, eyes like polished amber that missed nothing. She wasn't consortium. She was a prisoner too, just one allowed to walk. Her name, I would later learn, was Caliph of Vornak, a warrior of a species that valued oaths more than life. At the time, all I knew was the way she paused in front of my cell longer than necessary. "You," she said, her voice low and accented through the universal translator. "You are not broken." I laughed weakly. "Give it time." Her lips curved, not a smile exactly, but something like respect. "If they break you, they will have to work for it." That was the beginning. The consortium ship was not a place designed for escape. It was layered with redundancies, security fields nested inside each other like predator jaws. Prisoners were assets. Assets didn't run. Caliph had already tried. Her species had been captured after resisting a mining annexation. The consortium admired her combat record, her tactical mind. They kept her alive as leverage, parading her strength before others as proof that resistance was pointless. They underestimated one thing. Caliph learned. She watched guard rotations, counted seconds between system pulses, cataloged weaknesses with the patience of stone. And somehow, against every instinct she had, she decided to include me. "Why me?" I asked during one of our whispered exchanges, my forehead pressed against the cell's energy field. "You see patterns," she said simply, "and you are afraid, but not ruled by it." "I'm very ruled by it," I muttered. She shook her head. "Fear is a signal. You listen. That makes you useful." Useful. No one had called me that in a long time. She needed access codes. I needed a reason to keep breathing. Together, it was almost enough. The escape plan grew in fragments. Stolen minutes during maintenance cycles, coded gestures, deliberate mistakes made to test responses. Caliph took the risks. I took notes in my head until my thoughts felt like razor wire. Then the consortium moved us. Without warning, the ship dropped into null space, a region where communication fractured and physics grew flexible. We were being transferred to a deep facility, one designed to erase identities entirely. We would not survive that. The night before the transfer, if night had meaning here, Caliph stood outside my cell longer than ever. Her armor bore fresh scorch marks. One of her eyes was bruised darker than the other. "They know," I whispered. "They suspect," she corrected. There is a difference. She keyed a sequence into her gauntlet. My cell flickered. Caliph, I hissed. If this fails. It will not, she said. Then, after a pause, quieter. But if it does, I would rather fail trying than rot waiting. The field collapsed. For the first time since my abduction, I stepped into open space. Alarms did not immediately sound. That alone felt like a miracle. We moved fast. Caliph led. I followed, heart hammering hard enough to bruise my ribs. Corridors twisted and shifted, responding to threat assessments in real time. Where I hesitated, she didn't. She trusted me to reroute panels, override locks, force doors that weren't meant to open. We freed others when we could. Some ran. Some froze. Some were cut down when the alarms finally screamed to life. By the time we reached the auxiliary hangar, the ship was fully awake and very angry. Consortium enforcers poured in tall, jointed things wrapped in exoskeletons that hummed with kinetic fields. Caliph stepped in front of me without hesitation. Stay behind me, she said. I can help, I protested. You are helping, she replied, drawing her blade. I had never seen her fight up close. It wasn't rage or desperation. It was art. Each movement flowed into the next, efficient and devastating. She struck weak points with surgical precision, disabling rather than killing when possible, killing when necessary. I did what I could, rerouting gravity nodes, slamming bulkheads shut, buying seconds that felt like stolen lifetimes. We almost made it. The hangar doors yawned open, revealing a small scout craft, ugly, asymmetrical, barely space-worthy. Freedom, 10 meters away. That was when the blast took her. The shockwave threw me against the wall. My vision went white, then red. When I could see again, Caliph was on one knee, armor fractured, one arm hanging wrong. Caliph. I crawled toward her. She looked up at me, breath coming in sharp, controlled pulls. Listen. No, you listen, I snapped, adrenaline shredding fear. We're getting out. Together. Her gaze softened. Human. If we escape. Another explosion rocked the deck. She grabbed my wrist with her good hand, strength still terrifying, even broken. If we escape, she said, voice steady despite the chaos, I will marry you. The words didn't make sense. Not here. Not now. What? I choked. In my culture, she continued, eyes locked on mine, one does not promise a future unless they intend to survive it. This is my oath. Blaster fire scorched the air around us. You can't just... I laughed hysterically. You don't even know me. I know enough, she said. You choose hope under pressure. That is rare. I swallowed hard. You realize human marriage involves paperwork. A faint, crooked smile. Then we will conquer paperwork. Something fierce and impossible ignited in my chest. Fine, I said, hauling her up. But you don't get to propose and then die on me. She huffed, a sound that might have been a laugh. Together, we staggered to the scout craft. I sealed the hatch as Consortium fire stitched the hull. The engine screamed in protest as I brought them online, overriding safeties I barely understood. Hold on, I muttered. Caliph braced herself, blood dark against her armor. The ship lurched, tore free, and punched into open space just as the hangar detonated behind us. Stars stretched. Reality screamed. Then silence. We drifted for hours. Or days. Time lost meaning between system failures and emergency repairs. I worked until my hands shook. Caliph watched my back, even injured, even exhausted. Eventually, we found refuge, a fringe world outside Consortium reach, its sky copper red and its cities carved into living stone. Neutral territory. Sanctuary of a sort. Caliph survived. Barely. Her people found us weeks later, tracking her transponder through impossible odds. Warriors filled the landing field, armor gleaming, weapons lowered not in surrender, but recognition. They bowed to her. And then, to my absolute horror, to me. She has spoken her oath, their leader said, studying me with eyes like molten gold. Do you accept? I looked at Caliph, at the warrior who had chosen hope and dragged me with her, at the universe that had tried very hard to kill us both. I think, I said slowly, I already did. Calitha's hand found mine. Steady. Warm. Then we will build a future, she said. Whatever it takes. The stars above us felt a little less cold. And for the first time since leaving Earth, I believed I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was going somewhere with her. The first weeks on Vornak Prime passed in a blur of pain, healing, and culture shock. Calitha's people were not cruel, but they were intense in a way that made human militaries feel almost casual. Every interaction carried weight. Every word was measured. Promises were not spoken lightly, and when they were, they became law. That was the part that truly terrified me. I sat beside Calitha's recovery platform while bioluminescent healing filaments stitched her shattered bones and ruptured muscle fibers back together. The chamber smelled of ozone and warm stone. Outside, the city echoed with distant metallic chants, warriors reciting lineage and battle oaths that stretched back thousands of years. I leaned forward. So, about that thing you said on the ship. Her eyes opened slowly. Still amber. Still sharp. Still very much alive. You mean my survival oath? She asked. I mean the marriage survival oath, I said. You dropped that like it was a casual comment. She considered me in silence. On Vornak Prime, silence was never empty. In my culture, she said at last, bonding is declared only when death is probable. It binds two lives together, so neither may face the end alone. Right? I muttered. Of course it does. You regret it? She asked, voice calm but watching me carefully. I swallowed. Thought about the consortium cages. The escape. The way she'd shielded me without hesitation. No, I said honestly. I'm just processing that I might be engaged because of a prison break. Her lips curved, this time unmistakably a smile. An honorable origin, she said. I groaned and rested my face in my hands. The consortium did not forget its escaped assets. 3 months after our arrival, the first probes appeared at the edge of the system, long-range scanners disguised as mining drones. Vornak Prime was neutral territory, but neutrality meant nothing to an empire built on consumption. The Council of Blades convened. Caliph stood before them, restored and armored once more, her presence commanding silence. I stood beside her, very aware that I was the only soft, fragile thing in a room full of apex predators. The consortium will return in force, one elder declared. They always do. Then we deny them victory, Caliph replied. They outnumber us. Then we make the cost unacceptable. That was when every gaze turned to me. I blinked. Oh no. Caliph placed a hand on my shoulder. You understand their systems, their logic, their arrogance. I understand that I'm very breakable, I said. You've all seen humans, right? We're mostly water and bad decisions. A ripple of something like amusement moved through the chamber. They broke you once, the elder said. And you escaped. I exhaled slowly. Fine. But if I'm doing this, we do it my way. Explain, Caliph said. They expect resistance to look like weapons, I said. So we don't give them that. We give them contradictions. Ghost signals. False victories. We turn their strength into confusion. Silence. Then Caliph nodded. You hear him. Prepare the defenses. Just like that, I became a strategist. The battle for Vornak Prime never looked like a battle. The consortium fleet arrived confident, sleek, terrifying, overwhelming. They deployed drones into empty space, chasing signatures that dissolved into nothing. Their command ships found navigation routes collapsing into dead zones. Entire squadrons turned on each other when their targeting systems desynchronized. Caliph led strike teams that never stayed long enough to be tracked. I coordinated misdirection from deep within the city's core, hands flying across interfaces never meant for human fingers. We didn't destroy the fleet. We humiliated it. When the consortium flagship finally retreated, bleeding power and prestige, the skies of Vornak Prime burned red with atmospheric ionization, a warning written across the stars. Do not return. They didn't. The bond ceremony happened at dawn. No grand cathedral. No audience of billions. Just the stone plateau overlooking the city, the rising sun igniting Calitha's armor in molten gold. I wore formal human attire adapted awkwardly to Vornak customs. She wore no helmet, her scars visible and unhidden. Marks of survival, not shame. The elder spoke. Caliph knelt, not in submission, but in equality, and extended her blade. I placed my hand over hers. If you fall, the elder intoned, she will stand. If you stand, Caliph said quietly, eyes never leaving mine, I will stand beside you. The blade lowered, the oath sealed. When she rose, she leaned down just enough for me to hear. You are now my equal, she said. There is no retreat. I smiled, heart pounding. Good. I was terrible at running anyway. Years later, when humans and Vornaki finally established open contact, historians would argue over what truly changed the balance of power in the quadrant. Some would say it was strategy. Some would say it was defiance. But I would remember it differently. It started with a warrior who chose hope in a burning corridor, with words spoken not to guarantee survival, but to demand it. If we escape, she had said, I'll marry you. And somehow, against the will of an empire and the cruelty of the stars, we did.